Angela Reyes kept 17 birthday cards in a shoebox for 17 years. She never sent a single one, because for 17 years she didn't have an address to send them to. Every year on the same date, she bought a card, wrote the same 3 words inside, "I'm still here," and placed it in the box with the others, sealing it shut like a promise she was terrified to break. She never told anyone about the box. Not her sister, not her coworkers, not the man she almost married in 2019. On a Tuesday afternoon in a television studio in Atlanta, that shoebox finally reached the person it was written for. And the host of the show, a man who had interviewed thousands of families over the years, stopped the entire taping and told the cameras to keep rolling anyway, because what was happening on that stage, he said, is more important than any game we could ever play. The studio that morning had the same buzz it always did. 2 families stood at their podiums under the lights, one in blue, one in red, laughing at something the warm-up comedian had said before the cameras started rolling. Marcus Steele walked out to his usual applause, tugging at his cuffs, cracking a joke about the Atlanta traffic that had nearly made him late. He shook hands, complimented a woman's earrings, told a father in the front row his tie was doing entirely too much, and the audience laughed the easy laugh of people who came to feel good for an hour. Nobody in that room knew that the woman standing at the blue podium, a soft-spoken hotel housekeeper named Angela Reyes, had spent the entire morning in the bathroom of her hotel room trying to steady her hands enough to apply her makeup. Her sister Denise, standing beside her, kept glancing at her sideways. The way you look at someone you're worried might fall. Angela wore a small gold locket that never came off, the clasp worn smooth from 17 years of her thumb running over it, though nobody watching would have thought twice about it. She smiled when the cameras panned to her. It was a real smile, and also, somehow, not. But nobody in that studio knew what was about to happen next. Angela Reyes had lost her son on a Thursday in October, 17 years earlier, in a courtroom that smelled like old carpet and coffee. She had been 22 years old, working 2 jobs, living in a car for 3 of those months after her landlord changed the locks on an apartment she was 1 week behind on. Her son Elijah was 8. She had not hurt him. She had not neglected him in the way the file said. What she had done was fall behind, quietly, invisibly, the way people fall behind when there is no safety net underneath them. Missed a school pickup because her shift ran long. Showed up to a parent conference in the same clothes 3 days running because the laundromat took her last $5. Let Elijah stay home once. Just once. Because she had a fever of 103 and no one else to watch him. A neighbor called it in. A caseworker with a stack of 40 other files came, looked around a small apartment with an empty refrigerator, and made a decision in 15 minutes that took Angela's 17 years to undo. Elijah was placed with a foster family 2 states away. Angela fought. She hired a lawyer with money she didn't have. She lost. And when Elijah turned 9, the foster family adopted him, and legally, formally, permanently, Angela Reyes was no longer his mother. She never stopped being his mother in every way that mattered to her. She wrote the letters anyway. She kept the shoebox anyway. Every year on his birthday, she bought a card from the drugstore nearest whatever apartment she was living in that year, and she wrote, "I'm still here," because it was the only sentence she trusted herself not to fall apart writing. She was afraid if she wrote more, she would write everything. How she thought about him every single day. How she kept his height marked in pencil on the inside of a closet door in an apartment she no longer lived in. How she had gone to court 3 more times over the years and lost 3 more times. How the system that took him had told her, over and over, in that specific bureaucratic language that never once used her son's name, that reunification was not in the child's best interest at this time. that her petition was denied without prejudice, that the case was closed. Denied. Denied again. Closed. 3 separate letters, 3 separate years, 3 separate times Angela drove home from a courthouse and sat in a parking lot for 2 hours before she felt safe enough to drive the rest of the way. Because grief like that does not let you operate machinery. She told people she was fine. She told her sister she was fine. She told the man she almost married that she didn't want children of her own because she wasn't the mothering type, which was the single largest lie she had ever told. Dressed up so carefully that even she sometimes forgot it wasn't true. She worked. She cleaned hotel rooms for 11 years, made beds for strangers, folded towels into the shapes hotels like, and never once let anyone see the way her hands shook when a child ran past her cart in a hallway, laughing, calling out for a mother somewhere ahead of him. And that wasn't even the part that would break her on that stage. The part that would break her was smaller than that. It was a question. The families were 3 rounds into the game, laughing, the score close, when Marcus Steele, doing what he always did, filling a beat of dead air while the next card was being pulled, turned to Angela and asked a light, easy question meant to get a laugh. "Now, Miss Reyes, tell me, what's the best birthday gift you ever gave somebody?" It was supposed to be nothing, a filler question. The kind of thing contestants answer with a puppy or a trip to Cancun, and the audience chuckles and the game moves on. Angela opened her mouth to say something easy. What came out instead was the truth she had never planned to say on television, or possibly anywhere, a card. Every year. For 17 years. To a son I'm not allowed to see. The studio fell completely silent. Not the usual game show pause. A different kind of silence entirely. The kind where 300 people stop breathing at exactly the same moment because they have all understood, all at once, that something real just walked into a room built for something fake. The competing family, standing at the red podium mid-laugh, went still. Denise put both hands over her mouth. A stage manager near the wings actually stopped walking, frozen mid-step with a clipboard in his hand. Marcus Steele's smile disappeared. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He looked at her the way you look at someone you suddenly understand for the first time. "Say that again," he said quietly. Not for the cameras, for himself. Angela's voice shook. "I have a shoebox," she said. 17 cards. I write the same 3 words every year. I'm still here. Because I don't have an address. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he ever got a single one. I don't even know if he'd want to. But the real story hadn't even started yet. What Angela didn't know, what nobody in that studio knew except 3 producers standing behind a monitor with their hands pressed to their mouths, was that the surprise round scheduled for later in the taping, the one Angela had been told was a routine audience participation segment, had been quietly restructured 11 days earlier after a member of the production team, following up on a background release form Angela had signed months prior, mentioning a son she hadn't seen since he was 8, made 2 phone calls that turned into 4. That turned into a private investigator. That turned into a knock on a door in Ohio. That turned into a 25-year-old named Elijah Reyes, standing in his kitchen holding a phone to his ear, hearing a stranger ask him if he would be willing to meet his birth mother on national television. Elijah had said yes before the woman on the phone finished the sentence. Marcus Steele stood up straight, took off his glasses, and rubbed his eyes for a long moment before putting them back on. When he spoke again, his voice had the particular steadiness of a man choosing every word on purpose. "Miss Reyes," he said, "I need you to know something before I say what I'm about to say. We don't do this. This isn't in the format. This isn't in the rundown. What I'm about to do is off the record, and if my producers have a problem with it, they can take it up with me after the show, because right now, I don't care. He turned toward the wings. "Cut the cameras on the game," he said. "Bring up the house lights. We are not playing Family Bond right now." A stage manager's voice crackled faintly through an earpiece somewhere, and Marcus held up a hand without even looking. The universal gesture of a man who has made his decision and does not require a second opinion. "This has never happened in the 11-year history of this show," he said. "But I've got a woman standing in front of me, holding 17 years of birthday cards for a son she wasn't allowed to raise, and I am not going to stand here and ask her to guess how many people said towel in a survey about bathroom items. Not today." He walked around the podium. He didn't say anything else for a moment. He simply stood beside her. And Angela, who had held herself together through 11 years of hotel hallways and 3 courtroom losses and 17 unsent cards, finally let her shoulders drop. "Let me tell you something," Marcus said, quiet enough that the boom mic barely caught it. Though it caught it anyway. 22 years ago, I was sleeping in the back seat of a 1991 Buick that didn't run right in cold weather, and I had a little girl I couldn't see because I didn't have an address either. Not because a court took her. Because I had nothing to offer her, and I was too proud and too broke to show up empty-handed. I used to write her letters I never sent. Too so when you tell me about that shoebox, Miss Reyes. I'm not imagining what that feels like. I lived it. Because 22 years ago, I was you. The audience thought that was the emotional peak. They were wrong. Marcus reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone in full view of every camera still rolling, and dialed a number from memory. "This is something hosts never do during tapings," he said, half to Angela, half to the camera lens he turned to face directly. "But I want everyone watching at home to see exactly how this works. Because too many people think help only comes from strangers who owe you nothing. Sometimes it just takes someone willing to make the call." The person on the other end picked up. It was his own foundation's caseworker, a woman named Priscilla, who had helped reunite 4 other families over the years through channels the show didn't publicize. "Priscilla, I need you to pull every string you have," Marcus said. "Family court, adoption records, whatever it takes. Legally, ethically, all the way." Angela Reyes, 17 years, a son named Elijah. "I want a supervised meeting arranged this week if the family is willing, and I want to know today whether an open adoption agreement can be reached with the adoptive parents, because this woman is not spending an 18th year writing cards to nobody." But Marcus wasn't done. He turned to the wings again. "Bring him out." The doors at the back of the studio opened. A young man walked through them, 25 years old, tall, wearing a plain gray sweater, his hands shoved deep into his pockets the way people do when they don't know what else to do with them. He stopped just inside the doorway, and for one full second, nobody moved, because nobody in the room but the producers knew who he was, and Angela hadn't yet looked up. "Miss Reyes," Marcus said, and his voice broke on her name. "Turn around right now." Angela turned. She did not scream. She did not run. For a moment she simply stood frozen, one hand pressed flat against her chest, staring at a face that still had her own eyes in it. Older now, a grown man's face laid over the 8-year-old she had carried out of a courtroom 17 years before in her memory. Then something in her seemed to give way all at once, and she said his name, just his name, nothing else, Elijah, and crossed the distance between them faster than anyone in the room expected a person could move. He caught her. The studio didn't just fall silent this time. 300 people who had come to laugh at a game show found themselves crying in a room built for confetti and buzzers, and nobody reached for a tissue fast enough to stop it. Denise had both hands pressed over her face. The competing family, the Alvarez family, standing at the red podium, didn't wait to be asked. The father crossed the stage on his own, took the microphone from a stunned floor director, and said only, "We forfeit. Give them everything. We don't need to win today." Before the whole family walked over and joined the embrace, strangers an hour earlier, holding on like family now. Marcus Steele stepped back from the podium and turned away from the cameras for a moment, one hand pressed to his mouth. When he turned back, his eyes were wet, and he didn't try to hide it. "I've been doing this show for 11 years, he said, his voice thick. "I've never once stopped it. I'm stopping it today." 3 months after that taping, Elijah Reyes and Angela Reyes sat down together, along with Elijah's adoptive parents, who, it turned out, had never told him the details of his removal, believing it was a closed matter, and who cried nearly as hard as Angela did once they understood the truth of what had happened in that courtroom 17 years earlier, and signed an agreement establishing full, unrestricted contact between Angela and her son, with the adoptive parents insisting Angela be present at his college graduation that spring. When the episode aired 6 weeks later, it crossed 190 million views in its first 10 days, and the clip of Marcus saying "turn around right now" became its own trending clip under the hashtag #TurnAroundRightNow, shared by people who had never watched a full episode of the show in their lives. A year after the taping, Angela stood in the audience at Elijah's graduation, in the second row, next to his adoptive mother, who had saved her a seat without being asked. Today, Angela Reyes no longer cleans hotel rooms. She runs intake for a small non-profit Marcus Steele funded within a month of the taping, called the Still Here Foundation, named directly after the 3 words she wrote in 17 cards nobody read for 17 years. In its first year, the foundation helped connect 11 other parents with children lost to the foster system through no fault deserving of that loss, and covered legal costs for 4 more reunification cases, still working their way through family courts across 3 states. Marcus Steele, in an interview months later, was asked what he remembered most about that day. He didn't talk about the ratings, or the trending hashtag, or the record-breaking view count. He said only this: "I remember she didn't scream when she saw him. She just said his name, like she'd been saying it in her head every single day for 17 years. And finally, somebody was there to hear it." Angela still has the shoebox. It sits on a shelf in Elijah's apartment now. Not hers. He asked to keep it. 17 unsent cards inside, each one reading the same 3 words. She writes a new one every year. But now, finally, she mails it, because somewhere between a courtroom that took a boy from his mother and a stage that gave him back, 17 years of silence proved something simple. Love doesn't stop existing just because it isn't allowed in the room. It waits. It writes cards nobody reads. And sometimes, it just needs one person willing to say, "Turn around right now." If this incredible story of a mother's 17-year wait touched your heart, subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. Share this with someone who believes it is never too late to find your family or your way home. Have you ever been reunited with someone you thought was gone for good? Share your story in the comments below, because as Angela Reyes proved, love does not have an expiration date.